Got the ultrasonic cleaner warming up. Looks like it's about halfway to where it's going. It started out at like 17 degrees Celsius. It's up to 22. We're gonna try to get it up towards 50. Run it for about 30 minutes to an hour. But right now I just have water in there. Got it all cleaned out from the last project that was in there. So this is the carburetor off of the Eton Viper 70 4-stroke. We're about to disassemble it and put it in there. The bike was running yesterday, but it was having a little problem at full throttle, bogging down and choking out. So want to disassemble this, make sure nothing's gummed up inside, make sure everything's good to go. Went ahead and took the air filter out while we were doing that. It's sort of necessary to remove this to easily get that out. You can leave that in and fight with that. But if you go ahead and take this one bolt out here and undo this hose clamp and this hose, so you've got a bolt here, a hose here, and a screw there. If you unloosen those three things, this whole unit will pull right out, and you should be good to go with removing that. And then you've got your carburetor. You'll want to undo your throttle linkage, undo your screw that holds in your choke. That's the little plate that you'll take off, and then the choke will just slide right out. You'll undo this 12mm nut, and if you can, and your bike's running good, leave the rear screw where it is and only do the screw on this side that's closest to the throttle linkage. So if you undo this screw, work it off the end of the thing, and then pull this out, that'll leave the screw that's, or the nut that's on this side of the throttle plate. It'll leave it where it needs to be. So when you reinstall your throttle cable, you'll leave that nut right where it is, pull this back, install the throttle cable, and then tighten that nut back up, and your idle should be the same as it was. If you loosen this nut and get it out from where it was, then when you reinstall everything, you'll have to readjust and reset your throttle. You may end up having to readjust it anyway, because if it was dirty and you end up cleaning stuff and it's running better now. But since this one was idling really well and only having a problem, since this one was idling well and only really having a problem when you gave it gas, full throttle, I'm thinking that, you know, that the idle should be good. Well, I shouldn't have to adjust that. It's probably the larger jet that's clogged up or something. But we'll take it apart, put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, get it all cleaned up, and then run through it with the compressed air, blow everything out of it. We'll take this apart, probably put new air filters in it, and clean it up. This had, before I could take it off the bike, it had dirt daubers, were all in there. They were nesting up in a couple places in here. I just took parts cleaner spray and blew all that stuff off of it before I disassembled it, because I didn't want any of that dirt going into the intake of the engine. So, all right, well, let's get to disassembling this and seeing what it looks like on the inside. All right, so we've got our carburetor over here on the table. We're gonna take the bowl apart. Looks like these screws I've seen better days. I'm gonna get the impact just to take them out. If you don't have an impact wrench, you can use, I think they call it a slam, like an impact screwdriver where you hit it with a hammer. But these these screws, you really don't want them to strip in the bottom of the bowl. These look like they were over tightened when they were reinstalled. That impact like that will just break them loose really easy. Most of the time, just make sure you put down enough downward force and they should break loose. That impact makes a huge difference. I used to strip these out all the time and have to replace them until I found out about using an impact on them. They come right out now. I was about to say I should have taken all 3 of those out before I said anything. My luck, the third one would have stripped, but just use a regular screwdriver to finish taking them out. They're super loose now. All right. Oh yeah, definitely not the worst, but that is gummy. And I'll show you, I can get it to pick up on the camera. Here, let me just pick up the camera. That way it's easier. I definitely recommend wearing gloves when working on these things, unless you like your hands smelling like gas. But check this out. Usually my pilot jet looks like that, but that is the main jet on this carburetor. And that's definitely why it was dying when you went to go give it gas. So that's the pilot jet, the little tiny one. And, you know, I'm sure it's got some gunk in it. But it looks like when I gave it the throttle, it just sucked all this trash. Look at all that trash that's in that carburetor bowl. And that definitely is not the worst. I'll put in a picture right here of the worst one that I've ever seen. Okay, now that you've seen the worst carburetor that I've ever taken apart, or what the inside of the dirtiest, nastiest, it was not savable. It ended up going in the garbage mostly. I took the parts out of it that were salvageable that I could use in another carburetor, but most of it was trash. The metal had just started deteriorating. But that is definitely the cause of why when you give it full throttle, it dies. And that's where that trash came from. So that's old gummy gas. Let's get all that cleaned out of there. All right, so off camera, I used some parts cleaner, and you can see some of it still sitting in there. Just sprayed it out and got most of those big chunks out of there, just so that I don't instantly contaminate my water in the ultrasonic cleaner. So I just got some of those real big chunks out. Drip out the rest of that stuff before we put it in there. All right, and then this is ready to go in the cleaner. I'm just gonna pop the hose off of it. And then this piece is ready to go in. Also off camera, and I'll show the reassembly of this so you can see how it goes back in. But this is the accelerator pump that goes in there. It goes in right in here. First goes in this spring, and then the accelerator pump on top. So when I reassemble, I'll show you that in detail. But I did undo that screw, pull out that accelerator pump really gently, and then that spring comes out. So this is ready to go in. Drop it down in there. It's got some other little parts here I'm going to put to the side that I had in my basket. Now I'm going to put the accelerator pump and the screw that it came with in my basket. I'm going to put the screws for the bowl in my basket. Now I'm going to take my 7mm socket and I'm going to take out the main jet. That's a good sign. I didn't have to put a lot of force on it. It came out pretty easy. And it is seriously gummed up. Seriously, seriously. So this is the emulsion tube. It usually comes out with the jet. And then this is the jet itself. So see if you can see that. So that little tiny piece there is the actual jet. Set it right there. That's the jet. And then this is the emulsion tube. The emulsion tube has those little tiny holes in it. So when the gas goes up into the carburetor, it turns it into a mist. And then all the gas gets sucked through that little guy, through the hole that's not visible. Now we're going to use a high quality, square-ended, flat-tipped screwdriver. I say high quality and square-tipped because if you use something with rounded corners, I don't know, bad things could happen. So I just prefer when I'm working on my carburetors to have a nice square tip. That was a tip that was told to me by Tim, and he's usually got really good information, really good tips. I like talking to him about carburetors and engines and other fun stuff like that. But he gave me the suggestion of using these, and ever since I've been way better off. So we're going to flip this over, and that idle jet should drop right out. Yep, idle jet's out. Like I said, it looks actually pretty good. You can see through it already. And it was evident by it starting right up. If you have a lot of hard starts, doesn't want to start, then idle's real rough if it does start, and you have to, you know, keep the choke on and stuff like that, chances idle jet is stuck. Alright, so we've got the emulsion jet we're going to put into the basket. We've got the pilot jet we're going to put into the basket. We've got the main jet we're going to put into the basket. We've got the spring for the accelerator pump. We're going to put that in the basket. Next thing we're going to do is pull out the float and the float seat. So usually you can take a punch or a little pick and push on the left or right side of these. Some of these are tapered. This one doesn't look to be tapered, it just looks to be stuck. If I were to say one end was bigger than the other, I would say that this end is bigger and this end is smaller, so I am trying to push in that direction. And it doesn't want to come out. I've had to do this before, where I'll put them in the ultrasonic cleaner for one run, and then after that first run, then that'll come right out. I'd rather not force it. I don't want to accidentally break off one of these towers or bend that pin or damage anything. I'm just going to spray a little bit of Deep Creep Seafoam on there. We'll let that sit there for a moment or two. And go ahead and just shoot a little bit down in here. It helps break down all the yuckiness, gumminess. This stuff's really pretty awesome. It'll also help protect these plastic parts. All right, so we'll see if that was enough encouragement. We'll see if it'll push out now. I'm sure if we let it sit there long enough, that would do what we needed it to with just the spray. But since we have the ultrasonic cleaner, let's go ahead and put it in the cleaner. We're going to go ahead and take this vacuum apart because we're having issues with that needle in the main jet and it could be clogged up. So we'll go ahead and take it apart. Again, I'm going to use the impact on it just to be safe. Watch out when you're taking this plate off because there is a spring under here. So as you take that last screw out, you should see the spring emerge, and just don't let it go flying away. That spring right there. Yeah, all this looks in good shape. Needle actually looks in good shape. So I probably could have left that together, but we've got it apart now. So I'll put this in here, put this in here, that in there, that in there, that in there. So I put all the tiny pieces in there. I did 5 full turns, and now you can see all the way through on both sides of that flapper. So like when you're doing the gas and pressing on the throttle, that opens. So I just wanted it to be where it wasn't touching on the top or the bottom, so everything gets nice and clean. So this is ready to now go into the cleaner. So the ultrasonic cleaner's up to 41 Celsius. We're gonna go ahead and set our time for 30 minutes. So we're at 30 minutes, 41. But I want to show everybody what this looks like. The noise is super annoying, so I'm gonna put it in its own clip. That way I can isolate and remove the noise. It's really loud pitched. So if you want to listen to what it sounds like, go check out the Honda Carburetor video. It's running in the background, and that video has like 15 views because nobody wants to listen to the sound of that thing. So I won't be including that in any videos. So if you want to go check out what this thing sounds like, go check out either the review of it or that Honda Carb video. I'll put the links in the description if you want to see it. All right, so let's turn it on. All right, so the timer went off a few minutes ago. I wasn't able to run out here right when it went off. I was doing something else, but this just went off maybe 15 minutes ago. It's not been real long. So let's go ahead and pull it out and see what we got. This was water, a little bit of seafoam deep creep that I sprayed on the carburetor, and then a little bit of the seafoam gas treatment. And that stuff does a good job at cleaning parts so I just wanted to give it a shot in here and see what would happen. It still, all the seafoam motor treatment stuff, gas treatment stuff, looks like it's floating on the top, so I'm not sure if it did anything. You can sort of see where I sprayed those plastic parts and stuff with the deep creep. It looks like, you know, they're really pushing the water away. There's a lot of air bubbles. It's trying to resist that water attaching to the plastic, which is sort of cool. Well, let's pull it out. I'm gonna set this down and bring you back once I've got it out of the water. All right, so I've got our parts out of the cleaner. Dripped them off a little bit. Just using the towel, wiping them down, getting everything clean, wiped off. I'm going to use the air compressor on everything here in a minute. Just sort of making sure there's nothing stuck to them big, make sure there's nothing loose. Alright, so I'm back. I hit that with a little bit of the garden hose, rinsed out the rest of that, and then hit it with compressed air. And that looks nice and clean. It's definitely good enough for what we need. I'm going to hit these jets now with some compressed air. Oh yeah, nice and clean now. Nice and clean. All those jets, you should be able to see straight through all of those holes. We can. You can see through the pilot jet, see right through the main jet. All that looks real good. Went through and I'm shooting air in here, clean that needle out really good. Make sure there's no water down there. Alright, so we've got our carb here. If you remember from before, this pin was stuck and would not come out, so we were not able to get the seat out, the float seat. It still does not look like it wants to come out. I've not had one this stubborn in quite a while, especially after running through the ultrasonic cleaner. It is stuck in there good. All right. So that's got it all nice and clean, blown out. Should be good to go. My hands now smell like gasoline, even though I didn't want them to. I'm just going to spray all this plastic down and the inside of this carburetor with some of this deep creep. It's good for all the plastics and all that kind of stuff, at least in my experience it is.
Put the tube on it and shoot a little bit right down into the gas inlet, and that'll go in and seep around that seat and hopefully clean out any remaining stuff that's in there. I'll just shoot it right in there.
Alright, so we're going to let that sit up for next 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to come back and reassemble everything. All right, guys. So we've let it sit. Everything should be good to go on it. The float is operating as it should. It's closing and sealing and opening and shutting. So everything looks good there when we drop your float down. It's really hard to pick up on the camera, but it is opening. You can see it right there. You see it? Alright, so it's opening and closing like it should, nice and smooth. So I'm going to start putting this back together. So first thing we want to do is this little guy fell out. This is part of the main jet. I'm going to blow it off with a little bit of air. Just want to make sure I don't have any crud on there. So it's going to go skinny side in, so the round dome shape will be facing up. And it's going to go in the big one in the center. All right. Next in is the Emulsion Jet. Drop that down in there. Screw it down by hand. All right. Then we've got the main jet to go in. Screw the main jet in. Got that in there. All right. Got the pilot jet. Drop it down in there. We'll use our screwdriver. I like to go about a half a turn or a turn in reverse just to make sure my threads aren't crossed. Make sure everything seats good. And not going to over tighten that, just make sure it's in there nice and snug. Same thing here with this this pilot jet. I'm actually going to, or the main jet, I'm going to go ahead and unscrew that just a little bit. Get my 7mm out. And just snug that in there. Then drop the jet in there. Alright. Now the jet and the Emulsion Jet, main jet and the Emulsion Jet are both in there. The pilot jet is in there. That's really all that goes in this bottom, or those two jets, at least for this assembly. You'd normally have to put the seat and everything back in there, but we didn't take that out. So next, we're going to put our spring. Right here. This is the spring that goes in for the accelerator pump. And that spring's going to drop in there just like that. I'm going to put just a small squirt seafoam here. Now I'm going to place that down into the groove. Alright. Make sure that goes in, and the rubber should go down in there. So it should seat like that. At first it was angled and it wasn't going to seat properly. I had it cocked up like that. That would have caused problems cocked up like that. So make sure that everything seats and it goes completely flat. And that plunger should move butter smooth, and then tighten it up. And it feels like it's moving nice and smooth. All right, so now that we've got that, we want to put our gasket back in. The gasket goes in like so. All right, that's our gasket. So the accelerator pump lines up with this little foot right here. So make sure the foot's in the down position. And we're going to take and put our carb bowl back onto the carburetor. So we're going to take this and flip it upside down. Everything should line back up. Something ain't right here with this accelerator pump and the way this little arm's working. This comes back. Alright, so we ended up just pulling this off because I wanted to verify that it was put on there correctly, and it looks like it was, so we're just going to put it back on the way that it was on there. Alright, now it's working like it's supposed to. That little arm comes down and pushes that pump. Before it was, I think it was just bent, so looks like we're good to go now. Let's go ahead and put this back on. Oh yeah, that looks like it's operating as it should. I'm happy with that. So we're going to put our 3 long screws in there for the bottom bowl. And those are Phillips, unless yours have been replaced. Go around and snug all those in. And just go around and make sure they're all nice and tight. All right, looks good. All right, so the next thing is to assemble the vacuum and needle at the top. So we've got our vacuum with the needle and everything assembled. This gasket indexes into that little groove right there. So that little dimple right there, if it'll focus. That little dimple goes in that groove. So we slide it down in there, nice and easy like. Everything fits in there. The needle slid right into the jet down there, so everything looks really good there. We want to put our spring in next, so the spring will go in like so. I'm going to put our cap on. Just had a little excess seafoam spray left on there. I want it on there, I just don't want too much. All right, and now let's put these last 2 screws and we'll have a reassembled carburetor, and it'll be time to look at that air filter. Just get these both in there and then go back and forth and snug them in appropriately. All right, so this phase is done. We've got the carburetor rebuilt, and now it's just time to hook it back up to the bike. So I'm going to set this to the side and take a look at the air filter.